Time for the Tesla and Palantir weekly update. Also going to include a few other charts as well. So starting with Tesla here, we're going to take a look at the linear scale fibs, just like we've always been doing. And really, the 429 is what we've been watching the most every single week. And this is kind of the first week that it actually closed below. But last week, we did talk about going to the low 400s anyways, and that's exactly what it did. But it went a little bit deeper into that zone and actually went closer to the 380s. Right, it almost even got to that 383.76 down there, the 618 fib, but it still bounced, right? And we still had a closure above this 406.80, which is actually pretty good. And I'm going to show you why in confluence with the baseline of the Ichimoku 2. When we put on that chart right here, we can see that the baseline is exactly at 406.72, and the 702 is at 406.80. So price just got a lot of liquidity below that level into the 380s and then bounced and closed above. So this is really nice, mainly for the fact that this is the first touch of this baseline right here, this orange line, since July of last year. So being that the first touch since July, it's actually a necessary process to finally get closer and closer to the end of its consolidation phase before ready to continue higher. So 406.80, 406.72, that's really going to be the new zone we're going to watch for support. And resistance now is going to be that 429.84 that we have been watching for a while. But ultimately, it's higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher high. And yes, this is still even a higher low from before, and it's also getting closer and closer to the weekly Ichimoku cloud. So the analysis is pretty clear, right? It's had a big breakout. It's basically been consolidating sideways since it really broke out in September of last year. It's just been going in a range, in a giant range, from the high 400s to the low 400s, and that's really it, with some brief wicks into the 390s, 380s. But this is showing signs of stability, and if this trend continues, then we will see it eventually start breaking resistance and continuing back towards the all-time high territory, even the 560s and the 600s above. That's going to be the next spot. But really, all we're going to focus on in the coming weeks is just trying to maintain this baseline and that 406.80 as support, and just give it maybe a little bit more time getting closer to this cloud over here. And then when it's ready, I think it's going to start breaking resistance again. So I don't think it's ready for 450s or 480s just yet. I think it's going to continue to battle support in the weeks to come, and just let it play out because the chart is healthy. It's actually one of the few charts that it's the least of my worries because the chart is very healthy. It's just trying to consolidate more time before it's ready for all-time highs. So yeah, 406 zone, maybe even another wick down into the 390s could happen too, but ultimately I think this is a perfect setup for just more consolidation before all-time highs. And next we have Palantir here. And Palantir, of course, we're always going to start off with the log-based fib here from the 2021 top and the 2023 bottom. And the 1.618, 157.62, it did close 2 weeks in a row now below that zone, and it even made like a little bit of a lower low from these previous little wicks here before. So this is showing signs of a loss of momentum, and it actually has been showing signs of a loss of momentum since it really broke below this Ichimoku conversion line and baseline, which was maybe 4 weeks ago, right? Right here back in early or mid-January, it closed below this orange line and the blue line right there, and it started to trend lower. So we saw a loss of momentum about a month ago, and now it's actually still showing signs of weakness. So as long as this 157, what is it exactly? 157.62, as long as that remains resistance, the consolidation is going to be underway, and maybe even a deeper correction can happen now too. So this actually needs to find more stability within the cloud somewhere, right? Now that price is finally inside the cloud, the resistance is going to be the top of the cloud, which next week is around 144, and the support could even be the bottom area of the cloud, maybe in the 110s, right? Maybe even 109. That is a possibility. So now that it's inside the cloud, it's free to go anywhere inside the cloud while scaring people if it wants to go down, or making people excited by going up to the top end of the cloud. But I think it's more likely than not to be stuck within this cloud, and more specifically even stuck below this 157.62 for some time. So it's time to be patient. It's time to actually watch some levels here. And the one level I do want to watch the most is going to be this zone right down here from the 121 up towards the 125. That's like the wick right here of the previous resistance zone. It almost got there this week, but some buyers stepped in and it didn't get there. But really, a lot of charts, they want to back test the previous resistance before things really broke out. And that would be at least 125, maybe even down to the low 120s, right? That's the minimum that I think price might backtest for Palantir. And we could even see price come back down towards the bottom of the cloud. Or now it's even possible for a 1.414 fib backtest. Why? Because when we look at this chart, since it broke out back in April of last year, there has never been a backtest of that zone. So as long as 157.62 remains resistance, lower is going to be possible, especially anywhere inside the cloud, and maybe even some liquidity down to this 104. So we do have to be a lot more patient for Palantir now that this trend has flipped. This is our confirmation, right? We always wait for confirmation that price wants to consolidate. And this last week, not last week, but the week before candle, when it closed below that, that was confirmation. And then there was even more confirmation this current week by going back up and confirming everything up here as resistance and going lower. That's called confirmation, right? Once we get that confirmation, we realize that it's going to take some time now before we break into new highs. And that's okay. And the reason why it's okay, because price does need time to cool off. We can also look at the 1 month chart, right? The monthly chart, and we can see the baseline's also down there too, around 111. That's even more confluence that if it stays below this 157 zone, then it's probably going to go to the low 100s, right? That is going to be the new major target for Palantir before any chance of a new breakout. So the name of the game right now is just patience, and while price is inside the weekly cloud here, it's probably going to stay there, and it's probably going to go deeper into the cloud and maybe even retest some lower previous resistance levels. So it's just no rush, right? Once we see things flip to resistance, there's really no rush to want to buy just yet until price gets to a lower level of support. So we just have to be patient here. Either we got to see price break above 157.62, close weekly candles back above it, or we got to see it get closer to the low 100s down here. Then that's where the true opportunity lies now for Palantir. So bullish chart, very bullish chart, but it lost some momentum, and it's going to take some time, maybe some weeks, maybe even some months within this cloud area before it's ready to try to make a move higher again. So no rush for Palantir, just patience, let it play out, because it just needs to find a higher low somewhere in this vicinity, and maybe 104.21 could be that target. And next we have Coinbase, and Coinbase, I'm going to show you the fibs again. We always start out with the 2021 top and the 2022 bottom right here, and price did hold a very important fib. So we saw price break through one support level at a time, and more recently it did finally break below that 197.27, and I did talk about that last week, that it does open the door for lower, right? Once we get confirmation of breaking below some support, it opens the door for lower. So the good news is that we see right here, right now, it did hold this next level of support. And actually, it's repeating what price did before, right? In 2024, it went up, and then it had a 158 backtest. 2025, it broke out. Then it had a 158 backtest. 2026, right? It broke out. Well, end of 2025, it broke out. And then into 2026, it had a 158 backtest. So history has repeated itself 3 times exactly now of this higher high, higher low, 158 backtest, higher high, higher low, 158 backtest, higher high, higher low, 158 backtest. So the reason why this is still bullish, though, is because of the market structure, and because ever since the bottom here, it is a series of higher highs and higher lows. All of these are higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. So this is our trend, right? We make a higher high, then we retest 158. We make a higher high, then we retest 158 or get some liquidity below. We make a higher high, retest 158. Do you see the pattern here? If this pattern holds true, guess what's going to happen? It's going to make another higher high later on. And that next higher high is going to be all-time highs, because last time it got stopped out exactly at previous all-time highs. So if this trend continues, we will see another higher high in the future. It could take some time, but all that really matters is not making any kind of lower lows. So as long as this 158 zone, or even the wick right here, what is that previous wick, is around 142, right? 142, as long as we don't close weekly candles below 142, it's still a higher low, and we can continue the journey higher. So history is repeating for Coinbase. The chart is just very volatile, and it loves retesting lower, especially shaking a lot of people out, while the chart remains high time frame macro bullish. That's exactly what it is. Low time frame, sure, it's in a downtrend, but high time frame, it's higher highs and higher lows, and history has repeated itself multiple times. So going into next week, we're going to watch a couple of things. We're going to watch 158.42 hold as support week over week. We're also going to watch the 200-week moving average right here, which is at 169.07. And then if that can break at the 169.07, then we're going to start talking about 197.27. So all these are good developments for the higher time frame. Just needs to start breaking one resistance level at a time while maintaining that 158.42. I also want to show you the monthly chart because something good happened on the monthly chart as well. And what happened was, you see this green line here? This is the formation of the monthly Ichimoku cloud. And guess what happened for the very first time as well? Well, it touched the top, the very top of the monthly Ichimoku cloud for the very first time. So the cloud does trend higher up here. And guess what? In the months to come, price can just trace the cloud up higher along with it and then continue back towards all-time highs. So it's just a matter of patience. It's a game of patience, as always, with Coinbase. We also see that 50-month moving average right there as well at 168.36. That's going to be an area to break above in the weeks to come as well. But ultimately, this is finally a breakout and a backtest of that cloud for the potential to continue higher. So a lot of good developments happened this week, touching some very important levels that usually mark the bottom from before. So even though there's a lot of fear out there, we've seen this pattern develop with Coinbase a lot, and touching and holding these levels is actually a good sign for some bullish continuation in the future. So the main zone next week, 158.42. Try to keep holding that for weekly candle closes, and especially a monthly candle close at the end of February. And if successful, we'll see a trend higher and eventually make a higher high into the 400s, 500s above. And next we have MSTR here, and MSTR had a very positive and encouraging development this week. What happened with this chart? Well, it finally back tested the previous top here at 127, right? This was the previous top back here in 2021. It was the price where actually we saw a breakout back in March 2024, and it actually tried to stabilize on top of that green level before the breakout. So technically speaking, this is the breakout zone that we saw last year that is finally back testing. So that is great. Not only that, it got a bunch of liquidity below it, and it went to the low 100s, and then it had a lot of buyers step in and close the weekly candle back above it. It also closed the weekly candle above this important fib right here too, right? That's the very top, 131.50. It also closed the weekly candle above that 2021 top right there. So it closed back above multiple levels. It did not lose support like it has been doing forever, right? Once we saw this top here at the 1.618, we saw it break one support level at a time, right? It broke the arc, then it broke the 1.272, and then it just went straight down in a hurry. So if we're looking for a bottoming potential, I think right here is a great opportunity, because not only is it a previous zone before a breakout, but it's also the 2021 top, and it's also the GAN level right here, the green GAN level. So there's multiple confluences of support now, and you know what? If it does continue to hold this 127 zone with weekly candle closes, I think we will be able to see it continue higher. And another view I want to show you is the monthly Ichimoku cloud, and I want to show you how close it got to touching that cloud too. So we broke out for MSTR in February 2024, and it still has not even touched the monthly cloud, and it's almost there. Maybe next month, maybe the month after that, it'll touch it, and then it's finally going to go. Why? Because guess what happened last time it broke out and backtested the monthly cloud? Well, that marked the bottom, right? It didn't mark it immediately because it bounced and went back up and did a double bottom backtest here, but that first touch initiated the start of the bottoming process. Sure, it took another 7 months afterwards to finally get the momentum to go higher, but that initiated the bottom process. So once we get closer to the cloud, that can initiate the bottoming process. It might need to go retest it a few times there into the 113s, but if we can actually just keep closing weekly candles above this 127 while it retests the low 100s, I think that's okay. So we can get more liquidity lower first before higher, but it's a bottoming process. And we saw last time it can take months for it to truly bottom. But I think we are at the beginning stages of that. And I think as long as this 127 holds week over week, we'll see a continuation higher eventually. But again, we might need to go in the months to come to at least touch that cloud before higher. So a little bit more patience for MSTR, but these are very encouraging signs for something to be more bullish on and have a brighter future once it gets closer to that cloud, right? We are almost there, and this whole zone looks very attractive right now. I actually did start buying again because why not, right? Why not? This actually looks like a healthy chart that is trying to just backtest levels that once we saw breakout before. So breakout, backtest, that's all it is. Previous resistance, flipping to support, that's all it is. Closer to the monthly cloud, that's all it is. Sometimes all it takes is time, and time is in our favor right now because it still has a little bit more time to go before it gets closer to that cloud, and then we go higher. So I'm very optimistic now about MSTR, and if MSTR is bottoming, that's probably going to mean very good things for Bitcoin as well, because if MSTR can bottom, it usually front runs Bitcoin, and if it front runs Bitcoin, that means we'll see it accelerate higher, and then Bitcoin will shortly follow suit. And lastly here, I want to talk about GLXY because there's a lot of fear about GLXY right now because of some of the volatility we have been seeing in the chart. So let's just look at on a fib basis here. So from the 2021 top and the 2022 bottom, we saw price go retest the 2021 highs. We saw it go try to break above, but it failed. So all price had to do, since it couldn't break resistance, it had to go back and get more liquidity lower. So first it broke out, it didn't even touch the 786, and then it went higher again, and then it made a lower high from before, so that was not enough to make it break into all-time high territories. And if it can't break resistance, we always talk about price needs to come back and get more liquidity before it really wants to break out. So what did price do? It went right down to the 1675, the 702 fib, and it touched it. It actually wicked a little bit below it. Price went to 1667 this week, and there was a very positive reaction. And in reality, this is technically the first backtest since it broke out back in 2025, April, right? There was a breakout in April, never touched it, never backtested that breakout zone ever. So we're doing a first touch right now, and that's 1675. Did not close back above the 2110. That's okay. It's all part of the process. But one thing it did do as well, I'm going to put on my GAN for you guys. We can see it retested the ARC. So not only did it hold that 786 fib right here, or sorry, the 702 fib right here, 1675, but that was also the target of this ARC. So we saw it before. It was a breakout of the ARC, backtest of the ARC. That was the bottom back in September. Then it launched into all-time high territory, or new high territory from the 2021, but it wasn't enough to get to the GAN level above. That's around $55. So since it couldn't really make it there, it needs more liquidity lower. Didn't really touch the ARC here, so it decided to wait a few months before it really wanted to touch the ARC. So all we're really seeing is big breakouts, big backtests, big breakouts, big backtest, and ultimately we might need more time for this chart simply because where was the bottom before? The bottom was always this 45-degree angle. Always, right? That is the April bottom. That was the 2023 bottom, right? That was always the bottom for the past couple of years. So it might need to bottom there sometime. So we could see price just gravitate down the arc here, and that bottom could be maybe $16. So if you're looking at a max pain scenario, it could be like the high 15s, like maybe 1550, 1560, or the $16 zone. That could be our max pain scenario before it really wants to blast off. Or we can pay attention to the fibs right here. And once it starts to get back above 2110, I think it could be safe to say it's ready to make its journey higher sooner. So 2110, that's our current resistance. 1675 or this angle down here right around the 1560s, that is going to be a target in the future. So I don't think it's ready for new highs yet. I don't think it's ready to blast off just yet. I think it is going to spend a little bit more time consolidating within this range, the 2110, the 1675, but ultimately it is setting up to go higher. And another thing I want to pay attention to as well is when I turn on the Ichimoku cloud on the monthly chart, what do we see here? We see a breakout and a back test of the monthly cloud. And the top of that monthly cloud is technically right around 1930. So this is healthy, right? If we take off the fib and its market symmetry, this is how bullish trends develop, breaking out and backtesting the monthly cloud for bullish continuation higher. So the chart is fine. There's a lot of fear out there because there's a lot of volatility. Yes, it's a down 30% a month so far, but in reality, when you just zoom out like this, powerful uptrend, minor pullbacks, and it broke out of the cloud and is backtesting the cloud. So this whole 19 down towards that $16 zone, this is a huge demand zone, I think. We also know that too because it's a previous resistance zone over here flipping to a support. So also a previous resistance zone over here flipping to support. So we cannot really be upset about price action because it's a normal process before new highs are coming. We need this kind of volatility before blast off. And this 19 down to 16, I think that's all opportunity. I would not be afraid of anything in the 19s, anything in the 16s, 17s, 18s. Any of that, I think, is truly opportunity for accumulation before blast off. So just more patience, maybe a few weeks, few months, but whatever. This is setting up for an explosive move, in my opinion, and I think we're going to see it in the months to come at least.